What's up, everybody? Um, I have a little bit to talk this morning and hang out before I need to hit the road for work. So I just thought I would jump on here. Let me get a link so I can share with everybody. Good morning, good morning, good morning. They are indeed eating the dogs. So there's that. Let's see if I can figure out how to share this. I should learn how to cue this link up a little bit easier, but that's all right. We're still learning. YouTube link. Bam. And I'll share it with my people. All right, I think I have all that stuff figured out. So, good morning. I had, it's Thursday, September 12th, had a really excellent men's group Bible study this morning. So, I wanted to share some takeaways from that and then if you're open, chat about some of the post debate politics stuff. So, if you don't know, the first and probably only presidential debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris was on Tuesday night, September 10th, and it was not good for either of them really, but Trump especially had a pretty bad showing. Yeah, just the decorum and the way they were going at each other was pretty nasty. So some things to talk about there. But let's start with a little bit of Bible talk because that's always uplifting. I am still in the book of Second Samuel. And this morning we went through Second Samuel chapters 7, 8, and 9, and I really enjoyed it. So I wanted to share that with you all. So Second Samuel chapter 7, God's promise to David. After the king was settled in his palace and the Lord had given him rest from all his enemies around him, he said to Nathan the prophet, "Here I am, living in the house of cedar while the ark of God remains in a tent." Nathan replied to the king, "Whatever you have in mind, go ahead and do it, for the Lord is with you." But that night the word of the Lord came to Nathan, saying, "Go and tell my servant David, this is what the Lord says. Are you the one to build me a house to dwell in? I have not dwelt in a house from the day I brought the Israelites up out of Egypt to this day. I have been moving from place to place with a tent as my dwelling. Wherever I have moved with all the Israelites, did I ever say to any of their rulers whom I commanded to shepherd my people Israel, 'Why have you not built me a house of cedar?' Now then, tell my servant David, this is what the Lord Almighty says. I took you from the pasture, from tending the flock, and appointed you ruler over my people Israel. I have been with you wherever you have gone, and I have cut off all your enemies from before you. Now I will make your name great, like the names of the greatest men on earth, and I will provide a place for my people Israel, and will plant them so that they can have a home of their own and no longer be disturbed. Wicked people will not oppress them anymore as they did at the beginning, and I have done ever since the time that I appointed leaders over my people Israel. I will also give you rest from all your enemies. The Lord declares to you that the Lord himself will establish a house for you. When your days are over and you rest with your ancestors, I will raise up your offspring to succeed you, your own flesh and blood, and I will establish his kingdom. He is the one who will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he will be my son. When he does wrong, I will punish him with a rod wielded by men, with floggings inflicted by human hands. But my love will never be taken away from him, as long as I took it away from Saul, whom I removed from before you. Your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me. Your throne will be established forever." Nathan reported to David all the words of this entire revelation. So let's stop there for a second. If you're just joining, this is Second Samuel chapter 7. We're going to go through chapters 7, 8, and 9. And we just read God's promise to David. So as a little bit of backstory, if you remember, David was a shepherd boy who was anointed by God through the then King Saul to become a very unlikely successor to Saul. Then David was successful in battle and became very popular among Israel. Saul became jealous, chased him around. There ended up being basically a civil war between the house of Saul and the house of David. And then Saul was killed. David was victorious. The Lord removed Saul from his throne and appointed David. And then this is a very poetic promise to David. And if you're looking at it through a Christian lens, we see this promise fulfilled in Jesus, because Jesus is in the lineage of David and his kingdom will reign forever. Now, if you're looking at it through a Jewish lens, you would see this as the appointment of Israel, the nation of Israel, saying that the nation of Israel will live and reign forever. So it's kind of two different takes on the same promise, but a very beautiful and poetic promise to God, or to David from God. And here is David's response in prayer. This is 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 18. Then King David went in and sat before the Lord, and he said, "Who am I, sovereign Lord, and what is my family that you have brought me this far? And as if this were not enough in your sight, sovereign Lord, you have also spoken about the future of the house of your servant. And this decree, sovereign Lord, is for a mere human. What more can David say to you? For you know your servant, sovereign Lord. For the sake of your word and according to your will, you have done this great thing and made it known to your servant. How great you are, sovereign Lord. There is no one like you, and there is no God but you. As we have heard with our own ears, and who is like your people Israel, the one nation on earth that God went out to redeem as a people for himself and to make a name for himself and to perform great and awesome wonders by driving out nations and their gods before your people, whom you redeemed from Egypt. You have established your people Israel as your very own forever, and you, Lord, have become their God. And now, Lord God, keep forever the promise you have made concerning your servant and his house. Do as you promised, so that your name will be great forever. Then people will say, "The Lord Almighty is God over Israel, and the house of your servant David will be established in your sight." Lord Almighty, God of Israel, you have revealed this to your servant, saying, "I will build a house for you." So your servant has found courage to pray this prayer to you. Sovereign Lord, you are God. Your covenant is trustworthy, and you have promised these good things to your servant. Now be pleased to bless the house of your servant, that it may continue forever in your sight. For you, sovereign Lord, have spoken, and with your blessing, the house of your servant will be blessed forever. So David's response to God's promise is humility. And that's not too surprising given that he came from a place as a lowly shepherd, and that we're told David is a man after God's own heart, meaning he has the character of God. So his response is humility. And I think if we look at the promise of God to David as a parallel to the promise that God has made to us through the person of Jesus, then I just wonder, is our attitude the same attitude that David had when we're confronted with God's promise? Do we act entitled to God's grace and goodness, or are we truly reverent? Or do we truly look at God and say, "What have I done to earn or deserve your goodness?" And I know for myself, that I sometimes have an attitude of arrogance or take for granted God's unfailing love. And so I thought this was a really great reminder. I'm going to mostly skip chapter 8 because it's more of a telling about David's victories in battle and then naming some of the people that were in his court. I'm sure there is some good meaning to be pulled out of that, but I'm not fully equipped to teach on that. So I'm going to mostly skip chapter 8, 2 Samuel chapter 8, and we're going to go to 2 Samuel chapter 9 and see a little bit of some parallels that are between chapter 7 and chapter 9, and then continuing that theme of David as the promise of David being similar to the promise of Jesus. So picking up the story in 2 Samuel chapter 9, verse 1, David asked, "Is there anyone still left of the house of Saul to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Remember, Jonathan was the son of Saul, whom David was bound with. So in 1 Samuel, David and Jonathan were close, best friends, even though Jonathan was the son of Saul and Saul hated David. They had what could be considered like a spiritual bond. They entered into a spiritual covenant with one another, and that could also be understood as a political covenant, meaning that their two houses were bound together. So you have this tension where the house of David and the house of Saul were at a civil war together, but also David and Jonathan, who is of Saul's house, were tied together in both a political and spiritual bond. So there's some tension there, and I think I don't fully grasp the depth of this, but I can see some parallels pointing to the tension that we have between our lives here on earth and the kingdom of heaven. Continuing, 2 Samuel chapter 9, verse 2. Now there was a servant of Saul's household named Ziba. They summoned him to appear before David, and the king said to him, "Are you Ziba?" "At your service," he replied. The king asked, "Is there no one still alive from the house of Saul to whom I can show God's kindness?" Ziba answered the king, "There is still a son of Jonathan. He is lame in both feet." "Where is he?" the king asked. Ziba answered, "He is at the house of Machir, son of Amiel in Lo-debar." So King David had him brought from Lo-debar, from the house of Machir, son of Amiel. When Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David, he bowed down to pay him honor. David said, "Mephibosheth, at your service," he replied. "Don't be afraid," David said to him, "for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will always eat at my table." Mephibosheth bowed down and said, "What is your servant that you should notice a dead dog like me?" The king summoned Ziba, Saul's steward, and said to him, "I have given your master's grandson everything that belonged to Saul and his family. You and your sons and your servants are to farm the land for him and bring in the crops so that your master's grandson may be provided for. And Mephibosheth, grandson of your master, will always eat at my table." Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Then Ziba said to the king, "Your servant will do whatever my lord the king commands his servant to do." So Mephibosheth ate at David's table like one of the king's sons. Mephibosheth had a young son named Micah, and all the members of Ziba's household were servants of Mephibosheth. And Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem because he always ate at the king's table, and he was lame in both feet. So I think this is really powerful. I love the fact that, so you can kind of see immediately the parallels between chapter 7 and chapter 9. So God taking favor upon a lowly shepherd and making him this promise that he will always eat at God's table and have build a house for him and for his generations after him. So that's God's promise to David, is a parallel to David's promise to Mephibosheth. So I believe that when the word says that David was a man after God's own heart, what that means is that he had the character of God, and that David in this chapter is not only honoring his promise and covenant to Jonathan the same way that God honors his promise and covenant to us, but he's also showing the character of God in noticing and loving and honoring the lowest among those in society. So the same, and I love this phrase that Mephibosheth uses, "What am I that you would notice a dead dog like me?" I just think that's really powerful imagery. I really love that. When you think there was this civil war between the house of David and the house of Saul, and you think he's looking for any last remaining relatives from the house of Saul, that he may be trying to snuff out the end of that line, right? End his political rival forever. And that's not it at all. Saul, or David rather, is looking for an opportunity to bless the offspring of Saul and Jonathan. So I just think that's really beautiful. And it reminded me how powerful the promise is that Jesus would notice, or God would notice, a dead dog like me and bless me by inviting me to join in his covenant relationship with him. If you're someone who's never heard that invitation before, who's never been invited into the covenant relationship with God, I would invite you to message me or contact me or say something in the comments, and I would love to walk through that and invite you to be a part of that relationship as well. Thanks for hanging out with me a little bit. Hey, Ari, what's up? Bible talk here. So I will excuse you from being on your phone at school so we can talk about the Bible. So that's my Bible talk. If you want to talk about Bible stuff, if you want to talk about any questions about the chapters we just read, I'm here for it. You want to talk about anything else, we'll talk about that as well. I did name the stream "They Are Eating the Dogs," so I guess let's go. There's three things. So shifting a little bit from Bible talk. Hope you were here for that and got something out of that. If not, I encourage you to go back and watch the beginning of the stream. But shifting away from Bible talk a little bit, there's really so the debate was horrible. I thought Trump did a horrible job. He was goaded into losing his temper and making and just going down a rabbit holes that he didn't want to be down, and doing a lot of character. He was just talking about things that didn't matter. There was not an uplifting message. He wasn't talking about policy, and he just got really distracted. So kudos to the Kamala Harris team. They thought of ways to get under Trump's skin, and they were successful at that. But there were a bunch of times where the ABC moderators jumped in and fact checked Trump and made a big deal out of the fact that they were fact checking him. And now it turns out after the fact that most of those were actually incorrect, and that Trump's original statements, which were fact checked on live TV, were actually correct in the first place. So there's three examples of that I want to bring up. Number one, I guess we can start with this thing of they're eating the dogs. So it's been a meme going around for about a week now that immigrants, especially Haitian immigrants, illegal immigrants, said in Ohio, are apparently snatching geese out of the park and eating them, or that has been reported. And there's been anecdotal reports of people's pets going missing and thinking that others are eating them. There was a video of someone eating a cat, I think like raw, which was very strange. I don't think there's much to this story, and I don't think it has much to do with the outcome of the election or what's important for us to focus on. But it is crazy how the internet political memes have made their way into the spotlight. And of course, the ABC moderators jumped in when Trump said they're eating the dogs. The moderators jumped in and said, "Well, there's no evidence for that." Well, it turns out that there is. So let's see if I can share my screen here and make this work. Let's see if I can find out how to do that. Oh no, I can't. I'm figuring it out, people. I am figuring it out. Well, it turns out there was a police report. There was a police report filed in Ohio that someone had snatched a goose out of the public park, chopped its head off, and then taken it home to eat it. So that was a sort of a verifiable example of where there is some weird things going on between cultures of these illegal Haitian immigrants in Ohio. So that was one example of where the fact checks were actually wrong. Another big point where they were trying to fact check him is that, Trump doesn't help his own case because he doesn't speak very clearly. He a lot of times interrupts himself mid-sentence. You are correct. A goose is not a dog. I will take that. But I think that Trump did say pets. He did say animals. I mean, I think it was clear what he was talking about. That's not that important of a point. It's just funny. And now it's a huge meme. I really wish Trump hadn't said that. I don't think it makes a difference or has anything to do with anything important. But you're right. A goose is not a dog. So, anyway, one point that does matter is this issue of late-term abortions. So Trump kept saying they want to allow abortions, or they're going to allow abortions up to 40 weeks, and in some cases after the birth of the baby. And Kamala did a really good job of giving this look like, what are you talking about, bro? And then the ABC moderator said, nowhere in the country is it legal for you to kill a baby after it's born. So even though they fact checked him on the afterbirth part, they really didn't. She did not address late term abortions whatsoever. And your average person, even if you're not maybe a super anti-abortion person, or actually really into the issue at all, the average person is horrified at the idea of killing a baby who's almost full term. Right? You've got a baby that's fully grown inside the mother's womb, and you would have to inject it essentially with poison for it to die. So the fact is, there's multiple places in the country where there is no restrictions based on time as to when you can kill the baby, and including Minnesota, which is the home state of Tim Walz, who's Kamala Harris's running mate. There's no restrictions in Minnesota on when you can have an abortion based on time period. And then there is a video that's been making the rounds of I think she works for Live Action, or she may work for another pro-life organization, a woman calling an abortion facility and telling them, hey, I'm 37 weeks pregnant, which means a baby's fully formed and viable, by the way, at 37 weeks, and saying, I'm 37 weeks pregnant, the boyfriend's not involved anymore, I just don't want this baby, what can we do? And they described to her in pretty horrifying detail how they could give the baby lethal injection through her stomach, murder it, and then dismember it and remove it from her body. It's pretty sickening to watch, so I'm not going to share that video. It's very hard to listen to, but obviously it's a fact. And then she asks them, is this like rare? And they said, no, we do this all the time. We do this all the time. So that's another example of where the ABC moderators fact checking was 100% incorrect, and Kamala wasn't forced to be accountable for her false statements on abortion. I had a third example. I can't remember what it was anymore. I should have done better preparation for this, but I just wanted to hop on for a little bit before I have to jump in the car and run on the road for work. So those are my examples. I was pretty upset during the debate because I thought Trump did a pretty horrible job. I'm not the world's biggest fan of Donald Trump as a person. I probably wouldn't trust him to like babysit my kids necessarily, but I do think he's the better candidate in the election, and that's who I'll be voting for. So I wanted him to do well because I want him to win the election, and I think that he didn't do well. I think he didn't do well at all. You know, there were some disadvantages, but he's got to be better. He's got to be at this stage after this many years of doing it. He has to be able to articulate himself in full sentences at least. So he struggled there. So yeah, I got a few more minutes to hang out here if you all want to talk. Hi, Judy. Do you eat dogs? Has anybody ever eaten dog or horse or pet of any kind? I haven't. I have not. There was that one woman in CrossFit who said that she tested positive for performance enhancing drugs because she went to Switzerland and ate horse meat, and she said that it was some type of testosterone supplement in the horse meat. That doesn't seem super plausible to me, but I thought that was funny. What about you, Jeff? Have you ever eaten horse or dog? I think the most exotic thing I've probably ever eaten was alligator. There's a restaurant down, I don't think it was in Jacksonville, Florida, but it was somewhere in the surrounding area. And you had to like drive out to a swamp and cross over a little footbridge to get to the restaurant. But what I remember is alligator was excellent. And everything's good when it's deep fried, right? And the other thing I remember being excellent was fried pickles. The fried pickles were great. So love me some fried alligator and fried pickles. So there you go. Not knowingly, but I have eaten rabbit and duck. Rabbit's good. Duck's really good. It's all about how you prepare it, right? I think I've had duck at a Chinese restaurant. That was really good. Rabbit, I made rabbit burgers once and it was gamey. I don't think I did a very good job. I'm like a real simple cooking kind of guy. Salt, pepper, throw it on the grill. I'm not super intricate. I'm sure if you did some type of sauce or um, what's that called, where you mix like the wet ingredients and the dry ingredients and you let it sit for a little bit, marinade. I'm sure if you marinated the rabbit, it would be pretty good. But duck is definitely really good. Have not snatched a duck out of a public park though. That takes it to a new level for sure. So anyway, I have nothing super important to say. Thanks for hanging out with me. Those who stuck around for the Bible talk, I really appreciate it. I wanted to share what was on my heart. I really enjoyed the Bible study this morning and got a lot out of it. So hopefully you got something out of it as well. Love to keep popping on for these random little shows. Like I said, I'm still figuring out what I want to do with this. I'm going to keep going live. I'm definitely going to do a watch along for the Bears Texans game. So that'll be exciting. And possibly, I don't think I can do the Notre Dame game. I need to see what Notre Dame Purdue is cool. I would be at the game, except that we're hosting a baby shower that day for one of my wife's coworkers. So I need to be home to help with that. But I really wish I could be at the game. So I don't know what time the baby shower ends and what time the game starts. So if possible, I'll hop on and do a live stream for the game, for the Notre Dame game too, because that'll be fun. I may do more of like a politics focused show where we kind of like where I have some structure or topic of the day type stuff and watch some short videos. I don't know. I really like doing this and hanging out with you guys. So I got to figure out what I want to do. No, no. Yeah, I bet it's really good that way. That would be a good way to try it. Um, in fact, we have enough rabbits around here. I mean, I have 6.5 acres, and we've got some carrots and stuff that we have out back in the garden. I bet we could. I bet. Oh, my son would just love it if I told him he could shoot a rabbit and we could eat it. He would just love that. I'm trying to think of what you would shoot. I guess you could shoot it with like a 410 or something like that, and it'd still be usable. Um, or you could probably just shoot it with my 9 millimeter. So I've heard about this. My understanding is that Project 2025 is a bunch of staffers and people who work for Trump independently. It's like a super PAC type situation. I wouldn't mind going through their platforms. I'm sure I probably agree with most of it. I think what Trump's dealing with right now is that, and he needed to get the base, which is me, like conservative folks and religious folks, excited about a second Trump term. And I think that was what he initially needed to do. And I think now he feels like he needs to pivot to the center to win more of the moderate vote. And so he's trying to work that balance between like, oh, the Project 2025 people aren't my people. And I don't know what that is. I truly have never been on the website. I have no idea what the platform is, but I'm assuming based on my background in political science and understanding that's what it is. And that's how most campaigns go. They run really hard left or hard right during the primaries and then try to moderate more the closer you get to the election. I think, where Trump's superpower right now is Tulsi and RFK. I think he should be giving them as much money as necessary to fly them around and have them do rallies everywhere. Because they're outsiders who are also left to moderate, and they're very respected in their fields and for their accomplishments. Whereas Kamala has the endorsement of all of the inside the Beltway people, your Dick Cheney, for example. I think Trump needs to really play on the outsider perspective. It is curious that RFK Jr. announced that Trump would appoint him to be the head of a special commission to audit every department of the federal government. And then all of a sudden, Dick Cheney came out for the first time ever and announced that he was supporting a Democrat. How interesting. It's almost like he maybe doesn't want them to find something. Could be interesting. What could it be? What could that be? But yeah, that's a good idea, Jeff. I will do that. Oh, thanks, Judy, for saying that I'm a good dude for helping out with the shower. I appreciate that. I just do what my wife needs me to do. Not super thrilled about it or excited about it, but we're gonna do it. So Judy says, I thought RFK would give Trump more of a bump in the polls. Also, I didn't even know Cheney was still alive. Yeah, I didn't know Cheney was still alive either. I don't trust the polls. It's basically a toss up right now. I think the polls have more to do with methodology and like who's the polling firm and what they're doing than it does with actual sentiment in the country. If you are kind of less sophisticated politically or newer to this stuff, I really highly recommend realclearpolitics.com. Realclearpolitics.com. What RCP does is they take an average of all of the polls and then like weight some polls over others based on methodology and sample size. So it's a much more accurate representation of where the polls are in general rather than at this one specific poll in this one specific time. So I really like Real Clear Politics. Real Clear Politics has Trump with an advantage in the Electoral College and a slight lead in the popular vote right now. But essentially, what it looks like is all things being equal, it'll probably come down to Pennsylvania, Georgia, and he has to hold Ohio. If she can hold Pennsylvania and Georgia, and he still wins Ohio and the rest of the states you expect him to win, I think Kamala still wins. So it really comes down to that. I don't look to the polls too much, but I like Real Clear Politics. I was not a big fan of RFK Jr. before because honestly, because of his because of his stance on abortion and he's just a liberal. So I really didn't support him at all, even though I liked his attitude towards health and his stance on health related issues. I think Make America Healthy Again is a fantastic initiative, and I would love to see the health and fitness community, who is usually apolitical, coalesce around Trump and Kennedy. I think that would be really fantastic. But they have, what is it, approximately 8 weeks left to do it. So I think that's a significant amount of time in politics. We've had these debates. Um, I heard that Kamala's camp is asking for another debate, which is kind of surprising. And then I heard Fox is asking them both to do another debate. I doubt that that'll happen. I doubt there will be another debate, but if there is, it could be important. But honestly, don't put too much stock in the debates. I think how they're running on social media and direct ad campaigns will be really crucial. Kamala has done a really great job with direct ad campaigns so far. I think Trump needs to catch up, but I think he should lean heavily on Tulsi and RFK Jr. So, all right, I stayed 10 minutes longer than I meant to. Thank you again for hanging out with me. Jeff, I am going to check out the Project 2025 thing. We'll do a video on that. And you all have a great day. Be blessed.